2025 is already shaping up to be a busy year in video games. So that's why we're going to talk about just 10 of the games that I think you need to have on your radar throughout the year. Kicking things right off is the game that I might be most excited for the first quarter of 2025, and that is Monster Hunter Wilds. I've always loved the Monster Hunter series, but they really started to hit their stride with Monster Hunter World, and then Monster Hunter Rise was a bit of a return to form, and now I think Monster Hunter Wilds is going to be the best of both worlds. Or is it best of both wilds? I got the chance to play this game at New York City Comic-Con, and they gave me a pin for doing so. And then I got to spend even more time with the game at home during an open beta period. And between both of these play sessions, I got a really good sense of what it's going to be like to actually play this game when it comes out. Overall, there's just lots of improvements to something that was already good. The game's weapons are more fun to use. Some of them got complete overhauls. There's new monsters, there's returning monsters, and there's a bunch of monsters that haven't even been announced yet. One thing I'm really excited for in this game is the weather system, which is going to affect every area in a different way. Adding weather is going to be this big dynamic thing that's going to make Monster Hunter feel much more alive than it ever has. Not to mention that Monster Hunter games are a ton of fun to play with your friends, but they're also a blast to play alone as well. For a much more retro single player experience, there's Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. And just based on some of the gameplay from the trailer, I'm expecting it to be really snappy, a lot of fun to play, and really challenging as well. Because the Ninja Gaiden series is known not to be for those of the faint of heart. But to make the challenge a little more palatable, the game's gonna have some really good looking pixel art. The animations look super clean and the monsters look awesome, so I'm very, very excited to play this game. If you're looking for something with a focus on co-op gameplay, then look no further than Split Fiction. This is a co-op only game by Hazelight Studios. You might know some of their other co-op only games, such as It Takes Two or A Way Out. This time around, you and your co-op partner are gonna be playing as two struggling authors who are just trying to get their books published. After a deal goes wrong with a VR book publishing company, the two characters are pulled into worlds that are inspired by the books that they wrote. One of the authors is known for science fiction and the other one's known for fantasy fiction. And throughout Split Fiction, you're gonna jump between both genres, and I think in some cases they're gonna blend together. Every level seems to have a unique gameplay element added to it based on what's going on in that level, and it's gonna make for some really fun gameplay. And I think the best part is that you only need to own one copy of the game between you and your co-op buddy. This applies to both couch co-op and online co-op as well. And honestly, I would love it if more studios did something like this with their co-op games. How great would it be to play a game that's got both single player and co-op modes as well, and the co-op mode was free for your co-op friend? I just think that's really cool. Anyway, if you're looking for a good co-op experience this year, then Split Fiction is probably gonna be it. But this isn't the only co-op enabled game on this list. There's also a game called Mecha BREAK on its way. Mecha BREAK is a game where you pilot a mech, you customize it, and you bring it into battle. If you like Gundam or Armored Core, then this game is for you. I had a chance to play this game's network test, which was player versus player modes only, but now I learned that there's going to be player versus environment. What that means is that not only are you going to be fighting other players, but you're also going to be fighting a giant big mech boss together as well. It's going to be a big epic anime robot fight, and I cannot wait to play it. And I'm not one to hop right into a PvP mode in games these days, but something about Mecha BREAK was a lot more fun. I don't know if I was more excited about the fact that I was piloting a mech or the fact that it really mattered that I followed my role. Because if I'm piloting a mech that's focused on doing damage to the enemy, then I better be doing damage. And if I'm focused on a mech that's support, then I better be supporting my team. But during the playtest, everybody started to learn their roles and get good at them as well, which made the game a lot more enjoyable. One of my favorite games in recent history is a game called Moonlighter. You play as a shopkeep who has to raid dungeons to get monster guts and sell them in their store. And at the end of last year, Moonlighter 2 was finally announced, and they released a trailer that looks pretty good. Instead of being 2D and pixelated, Moonlighter 2 is now a 3D game, which I actually think works. Even though they moved on to a different art style, this still very much has the vibe of Moonlighter. The gameplay of this game makes you focus on the risks and rewards of getting better and better loot as you move through a dungeon. After getting as much loot as you feel like you should be working on, you can end your run right there and just head back to your store to stock the shelves. And when you get to your store, you then have to set the prices for all your items and hope that they're right. If they're really, really happy about the price, that might mean it was priced too low. And if they're really angry about the price, then that means it's priced too high. And this gameplay loop results in being a very flushed out dungeon crawler, as well as being a really well done store simulator. And I'm sure that Moonlighter 2 is gonna have a lot more new stuff going on with it, and I can't wait to see what that is. So while you should absolutely get Moonlighter 2 on your wish list, you should also play the original Moonlighter. It's a really good game. We actually talked about Moonlighter a long time time ago on the channel. So if you want to see what that video is all about, then click on this link. Dead Static Drive is a game that I've been excited for a long time. The developers of this game have lovingly referred to it as Grand Theft Cthulhu, and that's because you're driving a car around to avoid otherworldly horrors. It's basically a driving survival horror game where you also have to make sure that your car doesn't break down. This includes stealing other cars to make sure you have something to drive, as well as keeping the thing gassed up. It also looks like there's going to be lots of on-foot traversal to get parts for your car and find weapons so you can defend yourself. The art style has lots of personality, and it makes the game look like it's going to be a blast to play, but really I'm just excited for this game to finally release because I was getting a little worried about it for a bit there. The developers of Celeste are finally releasing the follow-up to that game, which is called Earthblade. And while it doesn't seem like a sequel to Celeste at all, it is its spiritual successor. Earthblade's a 2D side-scrolling action platformer that's going to feature lots of precision and really crispy pixel art. And if Celeste is any indication, then this game's also going to have a really good balance of difficulty and finesse. So it's going to feel really cool to accomplish this game's challenges, but that doesn't mean those challenges are going to be a pushover. Now, I always love a 2D side-scrolling platformer, but I'm actually more excited about the world that Earthblade is set in. The first scene of the trailer for this game shows off a character's first couple of lines, and I'm already excited to learn more about them. And the writing in Celeste was great, so if that's any indication, then I'm really excited to see what happens in Earthblade. While we're talking about games with great pixel art that are coming out this year, let's talk about a game called Forestrike. It's a 2D martial arts combat game, but honestly, I think you should think about it more like a puzzle game. You play as a character who has the ability to play out fights before they happen, figuring out the perfect solution to that fight. So repetition is the name of the game here, and I'm really excited to see just how many of these combat puzzles we're going to work through, because your reward for figuring out these puzzles is watching your character lay out entire squads of enemies. Now, if you're looking for even more co-op opportunities throughout 2025, then make sure you check out a game called FBC Firebreak. This is a 3-player cooperative experience where you're running through the Federal Bureau of Control with 2 of your friends. The goal is to contain some outbreaks of some otherworldly monsters. And if the Federal Bureau of Control sounds familiar, that's because this game is set in the same universe as Alan Wake and Control. And just based on that fact alone, that Firebreak is going to expand on the Alan Wake and Control universes is a very exciting prospect. But to also have this game as a 3-player cooperative experience makes it even more exciting. Some of the weapons that they show off in the trailer look absolutely bonkers, and the enemy types look like a perfect blend of creepy and awesome. And finally, we've got a game called Eternal Strands. I think this one's coming out fairly soon, and it looks like a really good mix of Monster Hunter and The Legend of Zelda. It's set in a really cool looking fantasy world where you're going to be fighting creatures both big and small, and you're going to be using different weapons and abilities and spells to do all that combat. And while there's probably going to be a main quest to follow in Eternal Strands, there's also a lot of different quests you can take on just for fun. I'm sure these side quests are going to be worth doing for the loot and the rewards, but it was really cool to think about a game that's basically a single-player online RPG. But one thing I'm really excited for in this game is the character customization, and I'm not just talking about the way they look. The trailer only showed a handful of the abilities that are at our disposal in this game, but I have a feeling that there's a lot more. So if my hunch is correct, I think it's going to be really easy to make your experience your own with all the different builds that you can make with your character. Which abilities and weapons work well together, what kind of spells affect monsters a certain way. These are the kind of things that I love experimenting with in certain games, and I think Eternal Strands has a lot of that. And since the game's coming out fairly soon, then I guess we'll find out pretty soon. Now, those are just 10 of the games that I'm excited for in 2025. We haven't even talked about the new Nintendo console that's probably coming out this year. And when it does, it's gonna uproot my entire schedule. Anyway, please let me know in the comments what games you're excited for this year. It could be a game from the list that I just rattled off. It could be a game that I haven't even talked about. I'm always excited to see what kind of games you're looking forward to, because there's a good chance that I or somebody else in the comments hasn't even heard about it. If you found a game on this list that was exciting, then make sure you like the video and share it with your friends. And if you really like this video and you want to see more of this, then make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. We're gonna have more lists, more reviews, and we're gonna talk about some weird games this year as well, and I don't want you to miss any of it. And as always, thank you very much for letting me talk your ear off about 10 games that I think you need to be excited for in 2025, and I will see you in the next one.